Best.Podcast.Ever is sponsored by the Gertzberg Law Firm, a full-service business law firm in Cleveland and Chagrin Falls that's changing the way businesses retain their attorneys. Go to gertzberglaw.com to learn more. While you're there, check out Cover My Six, a complete legal audit of the 6 areas that most often create or prevent business lawsuits and government investigations. Go to covermysix.com to learn how we keep you safe. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to listen to the best podcast ever recorded.
It takes courage to ask for help, and it takes humility to accept it. And once you can get over those 2 things, your life will significantly improve.
Hi, Molly Gebler.
Hi, Alex Gertzberg. Oh, yay.
You know what I was thinking about? I came in today and I said to the people here that I think it would be really cool if this law firm had a thing where whenever anybody walks in, their theme song follows them. Right?
Ooh, like when the Indians go out to bat.
Yeah. Like, so Carmen, our receptionist, would have a button, and when she'd see you coming in, she would press it, and then you'd have your theme song play.
Do you want to know what it is?
What's yours? What would yours be?
My jam or my theme song?
Your theme song.
Oh, I haven't thought about that. My jam is Josie's on a Vacation Far Away.
Who sings that?
Josie's on a vacation far away. It's Cutting Crew, I think.
Oh,
Come
okay.
around to tuck it.
Is that like from the 80s?
Yeah. Everything I love is, well,
Okay.
70s. I'd have to say My Way.
Sinatra?
That would be my song. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Actually, it was sung at it was played at my dad's funeral, FYI.
Really?
Yeah, the priest wasn't happy about that, though, because it was a Catholic and they don't like to,
What?
But my mom said, you know what? He's dying. I'm 32 and I'm burying my 36-year-old husband, so I'll play what I want to play. Done.
I think mine might be Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, I like that one. I like that one. You know what? I was listening to a Whitney Houston song today or yesterday, getting upset with her because it was all about believing in yourself. You depend on, I remember long ago, never to walk in anyone's shadow. That song.
If I fail,
yeah.
if I
and then
succeed.
she does what she does.
What does she do?
Well, she got hooked on drugs and died.
That Whitney Houston. Yeah.
Is there any other?
I forgot that happened.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, hey, you had us believing.
I mean,
so speaking of music, did you watch the Grammys?
No, I did not.
Okay, can I just say that I never feel more old than when I watch the Grammys.
Really?
I am
Why
telling
did you feel so old?
Because I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Like, the first 3 minutes was a lot of men dressed up with things covering over their face and shooting and everyone dropping to the ground. And
Really?
yeah, that was the first 3 minutes.
You weren't in on that joke?
No.
Somehow.
Well, no. And I texted my sister and I was like, because we text each other during all the red carpet and then during the thing. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? It was crazy stuff.
I limit myself to just whatever people find interesting about those shows and repost them on YouTube.
Got you.
Right? I condense
So
it.
I haven't
wait a few
looked
days.
at. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta
Okay.
because NBC or ABC or whatever, they clamp down on the copyright.
Jay-Z got snubbed. I mean, he won nothing and was there, and then B came a little later with the baby. With this, like she was going to the
What did
funeral.
they name it? Like Mint Julep or something like that? What did they name their
Was that
Blue
one?
Moon Unit? No, that's
oh my
Frank
gosh! I went
Zappa.
to school with the Moon Unit.
It's something like that. though.
Yeah.
Oh, Blue Iris. That's what it is.
Blue Iris. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's between them and then the other Kanye and Kim. They've got some interesting
Silly.
names. Yeah. So it was very like. Bring back Elton John sang. I finally got it. You know what the best part about it was when they brought in Ben Platt to sing Somewhere from West Side Story, I believe.
Don't know Ben Platt.
He's a Broadway guy. He just came off of the Something Incredible Dog. It was a big big. He was also on Pitch Perfect, but it took Broadway to bring some class to the Grammys last night. I'll tell you that, because it was, whew.
Interesting. Speaking of awards, Molly Gebler,
yes.
Here, we need to do something here for the kiddies at home, right? So here's the deal, folks. Molly and I are really doing this podcast out of the goodness of our hearts, right, Molly?
Yes.
We don't ask for much.
No,
right?
No, we don't get paid.
We give of our time. We do this for free.
Yes.
I mean, yes, there's a little Gertzberg Law
There's
Firm
a couple
promotion.
perks. I mean, I think we got a bottle of wine once.
Yeah, that's true. But in general,
Yes.
this is a purely charitable
correct
endeavor in which we don't ask folks for hardly anything at all.
Nothing at all.
Until today.
Until
Because
right now. We need help.
We need help.
We need help.
Yeah. So here's the deal. You and I had this little idea.
Well,
right?
you had a little idea. I jumped on.
Not important. We had this idea a few years back to have an essay contest, and this essay contest was intended to teach high school students how to problem solve and do so persuasively in writing and concisely and logically, right?
A dying art.
A dying art, indeed. And exercises two different skill sets, creative writing and problem solving, right? And that first year we did it, we chose the problem for the students to solve. It was cyberbullying. And boy, did that contest take off, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. No, it was great.
Blew it up.
Two schools.
Two schools, rival schools.
And we thought, boy, we had our hands full, right?
I know. Kenston, God, that seems like a lifetime ago.
It does,
right?
yeah.
So had a great reception, gave away 10 grand.
Who won on that one?
I mean, it was some Chagrin Falls kids, whatever. So I'm just joking. We love Chagrin Falls. My kids go to Kenston, and I have to downplay Chagrin Falls, or else I'm persona non grata in Bainbridge. And
Big word, folks.
So that essay contest really took off, and we had some nationwide attention, and people came clamoring back for it for the second year. And so what did we do?
And bring in friends.
We doubled it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Added 2 more schools. We added Orange High School and Newberry High School. So now last year we did it with 4 high schools, a couple thousand eligible students. Last year's problem was texting and driving. Had more judges, raised more money. We gave all of it away. So 13 grand we gave away last year. Mm-hmm. And not willing to leave good enough alone, what do? Bit off way more than we could chew this year, right?
Again.
7 high schools.
7
high schools this year, and 6,000 eligible students. Which, Molly, I know how much you love to read, much less love to read essays.
As our listeners do, yes.
But that's a lot of essays, right?
And
so we already, I think we're up to like around 150 judges, which is great.
That's great. That's a good start.
Great start. We've
and
raised.
Thank you to those.
Yeah, we've raised like $6,000 or $7,000, and we need a lot more of both.
Yes.
Right. So this year we decided. Some of us decided. Well, really, I decided, and then Molly got mad at me.
We broke up.
We broke up temporarily.
We broke up, yeah.
I know, that was a big fight.
That was our first fight.
To have the kids choose their own problem to solve. And so that's what they're doing. So this is really going to be history making. It's already history making, but this year, having 6,000 students all trying to solve their own individual problems that they come up with, and then be graded on, not just on how well they can solve problems and how well they can persuasively write those solutions out and communicate them, but which problems they're going to solve, which problems they're going to choose. That's now a category, right?
And I have to say, because you and I were passionate about it and we're excited about it, but like today, the emails coming in, and I won't reveal anything, but some people that want to jump on, some people want to be a part of it, some people want to give to it. It was exciting. Yeah. It's just exciting to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really ramping up. So February 21 is the deadline for the students in those 7 schools. And again, did I say which 7 they are?
No.
It's Kenston, Chagrin Falls, Newberry, Orange, Brecksville, Broadview Heights, Beechwood, and Aurora. Okay, so those 7 schools, and I hope some of you are listening to this because you're in it, are submitting your essays by February 21. So if you go to gertzberglaw.com/essay, you can learn all about the essay contest. And for you grown-ups out there, the professionals, the business owners, the political leaders, the business leaders, we need you to read a few essays. So you'll see a link there. You click on the Be a Judge link. It's super, super easy. And there's another link for Be a Sponsor where you can donate money to go to the students and to their schools. And we really need you guys to do both. We could really use your help.
If you are a parent of a student in those schools, can you judge?
You can. Yeah, all judges. So the way it works is the essays come in not totally anonymously. You won't know what school you're reading. You'll only know what grade you're reading. We try to have all the judges reading the same grades or the essays from the same grades. So totally anonymous grading, and it's super easy. It's super fun. We've had nothing but positive feedback from the last 2 years, from sponsors, from parents, from students. It's a really special thing, and I'm still just blown away by how much this thing has grown.
And if you own a company, it could be a great something that you get your staff together.
Yep.
And have everybody read some essays.
Yeah. And if you donate any money to this, then you get a certificate from the Gertzberg Law Firm for a dollar for dollar credit on any legal bill that you get from us. So you can, if you need an estate plan done, if you need a will drafted, you will have it paid for, basically, just by donating money. So you're able to get something in return for your generosity, or you can elect to make it tax deductible. It's one or the other. But anyway.
And at the end of the day, folks, it's not about that.
It's for the kids.
It's for the kids. These are our future.
Yeah.
I know it was great last year to just be able to hear what they had to say, and you think you know what they're saying, and that when they're talking about a problem, especially last year when it was texting and driving. They're deep. They've got a lot to say, and I think it's a fun way to kind of get in their minds a little bit.
Well, and two, it's an opportunity. I mean, the genesis of this is really. Teachers have their lane and they know their subject, and usually that subject is a singular one, like English, where they learn to read and to write well. And then there's the problem-solving subjects like science and business and math, right? But rarely do teachers combine those at the high school level anyway. I didn't learn until law school that both skills were absolutely critical to succeed in business, and that you had to use them simultaneously. And so letting business owners interact with the students on those issues, on the same things that they're going to be hiring them to do for them one day, was really important, and it's turned out pretty well. And then the other cool thing is that like Jeff Hoffman, right, from Priceline, he is the final judge. And he is still like interacting with some of the students. That
so cool.
Yeah, I mean,
so cool.
So at the reception,
you can become a mentor after this, know, with somebody.
At the reception, which I think is on May 3rd, where we announce the winners, we invite all of the judges and all the sponsors and media and the parents and the students to interface with each other. And
we're kind of like Oprah that day, aren't we?
We are like Oprah.
We are giving money away and laptops and and that and big checks. And
it is a big deal. And everyone gave such rave reviews for both receptions that we had, right? Jeff Hoffman, if you haven't heard him talk, you'll get to. He is really inspiring. And you could hear him, by the way, on the very first Best Podcast Ever.
So crazy.
Go back to the website.
Yeah.
Anyway, go to gertzberglaw.com/essay, read about it, click on Be a Judge, click on Be a Sponsor, and help out.
Yes, please. We need your help.
Would appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm dragging today, Alex. I've been
Why?
up since 5 o'clock because I was kicking it with Kenny this morning.
I saw your live thing,
literally,
yeah.
I don't know how people get up that early. That's cray.
What were the Kicking It with Kenny activities today?
We had 3 restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
So we were headquartered at Crew, which is a beautiful restaurant.
Yeah.
You and I were there. We had
Yeah.
a sip, I believe, there.
Yeah. Feel like royalty when you walk in.
You do. It's
palatial.
It's whatever that word means, yes. I had monkfish
Ooh.
for the first time ever. Tastes like lobster.
Okay.
And then then we had Paladar was there, and they cooked up something, and we had the Paris from there cooked up something.
You mean you went? Oh, they all showed
So
up to
Crew,
the studio.
yeah, Crew.
Got it.
To Crew.
Oh, they
Crew
came-
hosts.
Okay.
And then they allow these other restaurants to come in, which is very, very nice.
Good.
To cook in their kitchen, and we did it all on. Visit Chagrin Valley or cvcc.org, and you can see,
Yeah.
or follow us on Facebook. You can see all the
Man,
links.
I mean, you want to talk about like a snowball effect. What you've done with Restaurant Week has been pretty
We
crazy.
have 24 restaurants. We had Capital Grill call us yesterday,
Begging.
2 days ago. Yeah,
Let me in.
Let me in, and we
Yeah.
did. We did.
But they make their own like Molly menu for Restaurant Week.
You know what? I did say that where
Yeah.
I cried when I went
Yeah,
to.
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Very, 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 very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so monkfish.
Do you need to take a nap?
I need to just go to bed, I think, and restart over again.
Do you want some wine with your coffee?
No, I've got some coffee. I'm good. I'm ready for Andy. I'm
Good.
pumped.
Oh, well, let's talk about
Yeah,
Andy.
let's talk about Andy.
This cat is one of my favorite dudes on the planet. He is, man, a retired naval officer, an entrepreneur.
That's a hard word to say.
Entrepreneur? Oh, retired naval officer?
No.
You just say it slowly.
Entrepreneur. That ending I just mess up every time. Entrepreneur.
Which is ironic because you're
Say
head
it.
of the Chamber of Commerce
know.
and
Oh, I
work
mess
with
up every time.
entrepreneurs
Say
all
it.
day long. Entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. I mess up that ending every time.
We ought to come up with a like a shortened version for you.
An
EP. An entree. Andy is he invented a tent, a canopy that is totally weatherproof, and he's got a great story about how he invented it. He's got kind of a sad but somewhat uplifting story about his wife who passed from a very rare kind of cancer, and he's going to talk about that. And between those 3 areas of his life, somehow he manages to get through. I mean, he's raising this great kid who may even be here with him. Hank, man, he's just the cutest little kid you've ever seen.
I can't wait.
Except for Maya, of course, but
Well, obviously.
he's the second cutest kid ever, he's raising him by himself. He is dealing with all the things that entrepreneurs deal with, right, when they're just starting
In the
something.
entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, and it's just like it's wide open sky for him, right? Like he's got this thing that I'm convinced is going to be like.
Should we get him on Shark Tank? Should
Yeah.
we call Jeff Hoffman and get him on Shark
Totally
Tank?
should. We totally should. Yeah, Jeff, I know you're listening. You're gonna want to get.
Because you have nothing else to do,
right?
Jeff.
So you're like in Sri Lanka right now.
Yes, probably.
No, but one of the things I really want to ask him about is how he deals with stress from all 3 of those areas of his life, because I've never seen him stressed out. He's like, remember when we had James Sullivan? He's that lawyer, same thing, right?
Right,
Like
right.
one of the reasons that I like having this podcast is because you get people on there who deal with these weighty issues, these heavy issues. And man, I've never seen them break a sweat.
Kind of reminds you, hey,
Yeah.
let's
Well,
put
I
some
want
things
that.
in. Yeah.
I want to know what their secret is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mine is I just internalize it and then let it fester until
I eat it.
You eat it.
Yeah.
Well, whatever works for you, Molly.
You
Well, we're
know?
gonna find out what Andy does. So I'm gonna go get him.
Ask him if he eats it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get him. All right, you're right there. You're in the hot seat right there. All right, so Andy Macias.
Did we say that right?
You sure did, yeah.
Nice. Good job, Alex.
Usually it comes out Macias, and for some reason people like to throw an R in there and say Macias.
Well, hold on a second. Let me ask you a question, right? Because if a Mexican person were sitting right here,
Yeah.
you know how like Mexican people say or like Latino people say Latino, or they say Puerto Rico instead of Puerto Rico,
Yes.
right? Does Andy Macias come out differently if there's a Hispanic person saying it?
Yeah, they would probably say it Macias.
Macias.
Yeah.
All right.
And is that what it is? Is that your nationality or your
Yeah, my-
culture?
Oh, he's Irish.
Right. I knew that.
My
It was the light skin that he and I have.
my grandparents were born in Mexico.
Okay.
So my parents were born in El Paso, Texas,
Okay.
as was I, and I have 6 siblings. So
Where are you in the pecking order?
I'm in the perfect spot. I'm number 4.
Okay.
So that afforded me the opportunity to get away with all kinds of stuff.
Right. Your parents were just exhausted
They're
at that
exhausted,
point.
yeah. They probably still don't even know I exist.
yeah.
But I was by the time it got down to me, they were exhausted, like you said. They had no idea what I was doing. Probably
Right.
didn't even know what grade I was in.
Right.
And so I kind of got away with murder. And
Let's be truthful, though. You had clothes and you ate.
That is
Yes?
true,
Okay.
yes.
So you were taken care of by your parents.
Yes.
They just didn't care about you.
Yeah, they were kind of overwhelmed, with
Right.
6 kids. How could you not be?
Right, for sure. You were probably called all of them until they actually got to your name.
Oh, still do. Yeah. My mom will say, Tony, Tommy, Stevie, Eddie. And then they'll finally get to me. But I was born in El Paso, Texas. And we kind of moved around a little bit as a kid. My dad was an electrical engineer, and he moved us out of El Paso, which is kind of was a good thing. It's not a lot of opportunity in El Paso, Texas.
It's not the New York of West Texas.
It's not the New York of West Texas. And so we moved to just outside of Kansas City.
Oh,
Kansas.
there we go.
Yeah.
It's the New York of Kansas.
Tons of opportunity.
And we stayed there for about a year, and that happened when I was in 4th grade. And then we moved to Benson, Arizona, which is 40 miles east of Tucson.
Why are you making all these moves? Is that a military thing?
No, it was my
No,
dad
he was
just looking for
electrical.
opportunity to feed his family, and he got a job with the U.S. Army. He was a civil servant, and he stayed there working for the Army for 30 years.
Wow.
So I was born in Texas, but I really grew up in Arizona. So my parents still live there. So I consider Arizona my
Home state?
My home state, yeah. Even though I root for Texas, and I went to college.
Oh, boo.
I went to college in Texas.
Boo, even worse.
And,
oh, my gosh. Go Bucks.
Molly's angry.
Oh yeah.
Go Bucks.
Arizona is the weather's not hospitable over there. I don't like it. I don't like going in it. I've flown through there, and every time I leave the plane, the airport for even a minute, I feel like my sunglasses get seared to my face.
Yeah.
It's like so hot.
It is. It's
all
ridiculous. In the summer, by 7 o'clock in the morning, it's 95 degrees already, right?
Yeah.
No.
And it stays that hot until midnight. You walk out at midnight,
no, thank
and
you.
it's still that hot.
When I was in Iraq, there were dudes in my platoon that whenever the rest of us would complain about like the desert heat, they'd be like, "Man, I'm from Phoenix. What are you talking about?"
Oh.
This is really cool to be here. I mean,
well, thanks for coming.
I listened to a lot of podcasts. Like
You do listen to a lot of podcasts.
to some of my favorites are like Planet Money and How I Built This, and obviously the one everyone listens to,
The best podcast ever.
The best podcast. And so this is what it looks like inside NPR.
This is it.
Yeah,
Yes,
Right.
this is exactly what it looks like.
You know what? I forgot about Serial. You don't listen to a lot of podcasts. But
I don't.
You would love Serial.
Cereal.
Yeah, that's like 10 episodes, but they're
Like
all just
the
solving like
breakfast
one murder.
food. Oh, that cereal.
Yeah. Or like, well, yeah, that's basically it. It's like a different murder in each season, but it's documentary style, you know?
I think the first season of Serial is the most listened to podcast in the history of
You'd love
podcasts.
it, Molly.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, Molly doesn't read, so we have to
I don't do
feed
anything.
her intellect
I'm a
audially.
loser.
And the second season is equally as compelling.
Yeah,
it's
that's
about Bo Bergdahl.
You know, that's right. I forgot that one did not have a murder in it. The third one, S-Town, had the other murder. Anyway, you should listen to it. Anywho.
Wow, did we take a left turn?
All from Andy saying, so this is what a podcast is. Yeah, except we're way more professional than any of those.
Yes,
Yeah, those guys are like Mickey Mouse podcasts.
I mean, we've done
But
40, almost 50.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome you guys do this. I think it's exciting. I'm sure
We've
it's
got
fun.
nothing else to do on Monday nights.
Well, this is a good segue into why you're here.
Okay.
Right. So we were our crack research team really drilled down into the history of Andy Macias. Right.
Yes.
Now I knew all this stuff already because we are pretty much neighbors. Andy lives 2 doors down from me, or I should say,
I was gonna say.
lived before I moved out, and now
okay.
he's moving out. We've got this thing, Molly, in our street called the Bayberry Men of Leisure Society, right? Andy and I are founding members. You know what we should do after we move out? We should pass the torch. We should have a ceremony, and then the 2 people who buy our house, we should induct them into the Bayberry Men of Leisure.
You know what's weird in our development, which I won't say where that is, but you know, all the fans, I don't want any stalkers.
Right. Any more than you already have.
Right. I mean, it's good to have a few. But where I lived, there was a big divorce.
Exodus.
Yes, but the men all stayed. The
Really?
women all moved out, yeah, and the men all stayed. So we have a lot of single divorced men in our neighborhood now. I would say 4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So single ladies,
Single ladies.
call Molly to find out where all the wealthy divorced men live.
They're not wealthy anymore because they're
Well, I
putting
guess
up
that's
the
true.
wife in the other house.
So anyway, so I've known all this stuff about Andy through our extensive Bayberry Men of Leisure Society conventions. Navy career, from which he retired after 26 years?
23.
23 years. Why 3 more years? You had 20 in the bag, right? Don't they pay you for life after 20?
They do. They do. But
You loved it that much.
I don't think
No.
anyone that gets into that is doing it for the money.
not necessarily. No, I'm joking.
Doesn't hurt, though.
No,
Well, it doesn't hurt, yeah.
I think in my particular case, I had just arrived at my last duty station at about the 18 or 19 year point. And once you arrive at that duty station, you commit till the end of that time for that assignment. So that's what happened with me. I served my last assignment, and that took me to 23 years. So that's why it came out like that.
Gotcha.
And you were a pilot.
I was a backseater. I was a naval flight officer. So I wasn't flying the plane. I was the guy operating the weapon systems, talking on the radios, navigating the aircraft.
more interesting.
Which has more cachet, the front seater or the back seater?
Well, you had the
depends,
gun.
Depends where you are, I guess. You know,
Who got more ladies?
I thought you were going to say who got laid.
you know those memes that go around Facebook, like what my friends think I do, what my mom
And
thinks
what
I
I actually do.
and what I actually do. This is one of those things. Like, it's exactly what nobody got any of the ladies is what it comes out.
Wait, just as an aside, did either of you guys watch Saturday Night Live this last weekend with Will Ferrell?
No.
So they had one skit where it's like 4 dudes in 4 naval jets, fighter pilots, right? And they're all going around giving their call signs, and they're all like tough sounding ones like Maverick or whatever. And then when it got to Will Ferrell, his call sign was Clown Penis. The whole skit was about that call sign. It was hysterical.
Yeah, usually call signs are like something dubious.
What was yours?
Mine was Momo. And I hated
almost
it.
as bad as Clown Penis.
I hated it.
M-O-M-O?
M-O-M-O, yeah.
Did you choose it yourself?
No, I didn't choose it. If I chose it would have been something cool like Razor or something like that, right? But usually it's something dubious, something dumb you've done.
Right.
And it sticks. And the more you fight it,
right,
the harder it sticks,
it's
right?
like So how'd you get Momo?
Well, I remember I had called someone else a Momo. And I had just recently done something really dumb in my squadron. I forgot what it was, but
save it for the last question.
And someone said, "You Momo," and I said,
stuck.
"Don't call me that. That's my word." Because it was my word. And it totally backfired, and it stuck like
That's
glue.
all I need to hear.
Does
You're
it
Momo
mean
now.
anything like when you were originally called the first person Momo?
Yeah, Momo is like
like an idiot,
like a dumbass, kind of thing, and
Gotcha.
and it just stuck. And I didn't like it for two reasons. One, because I just didn't like it, and two, is my word.
Right.
I wouldn't have been called that had I not used it on someone else. Anyway, so it stuck.
Momo, huh?
I knew a guy whose call sign was Dogface.
Right.
Does
He
everyone?
kind of looked like a dog too. Like he had a dog
Does
face.
everyone have a call in the?
Call sign?
Like, do you have to be? Is it a pilot thing? Is it a?
We did.
I was gonna say.
In our convoys.
Well,
Mine was Papa Smurf.
Okay.
Because I was a convoy commander. I was Papa Smurf. And then my second in command was Rubber Ducky.
Usually in a Navy aviation squadron, it's rarely is it something that you like or something
Right.
cool.
It's not
Usually
Tom Cruise's.
it's
or
it's not like whatever Iceman.
Maverick
It's
and
usually,
Iceman.
it's usually not something like that.
Something like Clown Penis.
Something like Clown Penis is probably would be closer to reality than Iceman.
Andy, were you flying anything for any purpose, or was it like, did you have a main mission and a main kind of plane that you flew, or like what was your basic, day-to-day assignment?
The platform that I flew in was called P3 Orion, which is a 4-engine prop used to hunt submarines. So it's a land-based aircraft. It's not, we don't get fired off of an aircraft carrier, but you fly these really long missions, hunting submarines and tracking them.
So you had missiles and bombs on your plane?
We had torpedoes. We had bombs. We dropped sonobuoys. And so, but the primary mission is to track submarines.
How do you track? I mean, because they're pretty submerged underwater.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to do. It's really hard. And so what you typically do is you drop sonobuoys into the water, and the sonobuoys listen for noise. So you have to have a general idea of where the submarine is to begin with.
And where are you getting that general idea?
There's other resources.
Okay. Don't give anything away because I want to stay protected.
It's nothing classified or anything, but there's other resources that the Navy uses to know where a submarine is initially.
Okay.
Once they have a pretty good idea of where it's located, they'll send the aircraft out there to start tracking it.
Okay, so you have a mission that you're being sent because maybe they think something's there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so what the aircraft does is we fly on station and we start dropping sonobuoys into the water, and these things just listen for noise. And the whole theory behind it is you drop these sonobuoys in such a way that you can triangulate a position of a submarine. In other words, one sonobuoy will be feeding you information saying the noise is coming from 90 degrees away from this particular sonobuoy. Another sonobuoy will be saying, well, the noise from this sonobuoy is coming from 270 degrees. So there's a computer on the aircraft that connects the lines, and that's basic general.
So how do you fight a submarine I mean, you're not shooting at it because it's not. That's not going to. So the
We're
bomb
dropping
is.
torpedoes.
You drop a
the
torpedo. Yeah, you drop a torpedo from.
And they're not fighting back
They're not fighting back
because.
They send other planes.
Yeah.
To fight back.
Right.
So all this is happening. The whole prosecution of a submarine is occurring while the aircraft is flying at about 300 feet above the ground. Yeah, hold on, Hecky. So the aircraft is about 300 feet above the ground, which is extremely low for an aircraft to be flying off the surface of the ocean. And
what waters are we in?
pretty much any place.
Wherever.
I spent the majority of my time in the Western Pacific and in the Arabian Gulf. But that's where my squadron typically would operate. There's other squadrons that operate, in the other side of the world, in the Mediterranean and stuff like that. But I spent the majority of my time in the Western Pacific, Japan, Korea.
Did you ever drop any torpedoes in live combat?
Not in live combat, no, but in training, yeah.
And what is a submarine doing down there? Because obviously down there they're not harmful to us because they're down there. But what are they collecting? Information? Are they?
Actually, submarines are probably the most lethal weapon out there.
Yeah, they'll shoot a nuke out at you.
They're incredibly difficult to find, and they're very dangerous. Like Alex said, depending on what type of submarine, it could shoot a nuclear ballistic missile if it had to. The smaller, more like the diesel submarines, they're a threat to just general shipping. They're a threat to an aircraft carrier. An aircraft carrier is very vulnerable to a submarine.
Because they're flying over and then they could just...
Yeah, aircraft carrier doesn't really have many... There's not really many defense mechanisms out there to defeat a submarine. And it's incredibly hard. In fact, the best weapon to fight a submarine is another submarine. That's usually the best way to fight a submarine.
So, 23 years, mostly doing that?
No, I came in right out of high school. I was an enlisted guy. I came in a month out of high school.
Wow.
And I started nuclear power school. All the submarines in the U.S. Navy, all the aircraft carriers in the U.S. Navy, and at the time there was another type of ship. There were cruisers that are all nuclear powered. They don't run on gas. They don't run on. They run on. They have nuclear reactors on board. Every single submarine out there that the U.S. has right now is powered by nuclear power. So they train people to learn how to operate a nuclear reactor plant. And I was in that program. I went through 2 years of training. And I was assigned to a surface ship, a nuclear-powered guided missile cruiser out of Norfolk, Virginia. So, and I worked in the steam plant. I was a wrench turner. I was a mechanic. As sexy as it sounds, the vast majority of my time was spent cleaning things and painting things. And occasionally they would say, "Hey, Macias, we need you to go operate this pump." But I was a really junior guy, and that's how it usually goes. So I did that. I came in as an enlisted guy, and
what made you do that?
My father was in the military. All my brothers were in the military. Some cousins,
just something
an
the
uncle,
family does.
And it's, at least in my immediate family, it's just something that the men in the family do.
And what year are you? What year are we talking?
I joined in July 1987.
Okay, so that was before any of the...
First Gulf War was 91.
I was going to say Desert Storm was...
Yeah. So this is 4 years before Desert Storm 1.
Okay.
Were you in that?
I was in training when that whole... when the war started. And the ship that I was on, right before the war started, I applied for an officer program that would send me to college. And because I wanted to go to college. I wanted to get a degree. And I was going to use the military as the vehicle to get my college paper.
Right.
My parents couldn't afford it,
Mm-hmm.
So I applied for a program, and I was picked up for this program that would send me to school. When I got picked up for that program, about 6 months later, is when the war started. And my ship that I was just on went out to the Gulf, and I was in San Diego pushing a pencil.
Wow.
While the war was going on.
Someone was watching after you.
There's...
did you want to?
Part of you kind of wants to... You you want to support the guys you're with, right? So, of course, nobody wants to be at war. I mean, the last guy that wants war and the first guy to pray for peace is a soldier, right? Or a sailor or airman or Marine or Coast Guardsman, but you do want to be there to support your colleagues. And so there was a little bit of guilt there, knowing that my ship is out there and I'm here pushing a pencil. But, that's how it worked out. So after that, I went to the University of Texas in Austin. And so I go
Say
to
Texas again. Go ahead.
So I go to the University of Texas, and we beat Ohio State in Columbus in 2006 on our way to the national championship.
One time, whatever.
But that's a whole other story.
Did you want me to name all the years we beat you or no?
I don't know if I can remember any other time. I know there was a 1 year Texas played the Vince Young year where they played in Columbus and beat Ohio State in Columbus. And then the following year, Ohio State went down to Austin and beat Texas in Austin. But those are the only 2 times I can remember that they played each other.
All right. I'll find some more.
And so I finished college in Austin. I went to flight training in Florida, and eventually got stationed in Hawaii. And I was there for 4 years, and I met Sarah in Hawaii.
Who was a...
She was working at a bookstore in Honolulu, and she had a friend who was also in the Navy, who she went through college with at Northwestern, and Sarah had
nothing for that. That's fine.
And
I thought she was in so she wasn't in the State Department already.
Not yet. No, not yet.
You know what? You keep ruining things.
I really thought I knew Andy, but apparently
now I know he's going to be in China because you laid that one out. Now I know she's going to be in the State Department.
I should say spoiler alert
yes,
whenever I get my questions wrong. Problem is I don't know if I'm wrong. So what you're saying is I should just shut up? All right.
So
you continue.
All right.
Chronologically.
So she was in Hawaii working at Walden Books, and she did what a lot of people in Hawaii do. They just kind of quit their job in the mainland and they say, "Screw it, I'm moving to Hawaii." And
I want to do that right now.
And that's what she did.
Wait, was that a possibility? Is that what we do?
Let's go.
When you're 25, you do that.
Amen. Do it then.
So I met her in Hawaii, and she was working at a bookstore, and the funny thing is I met her on Saturday, September 15th, 2001, wow. Right? And 9/11 obviously was on the Tuesday prior. I wasn't supposed to be in Hawaii that weekend. I was supposed to be flying off on a training mission somewhere. But that week, the FAA grounded all the aircraft, obviously because 9/11 had occurred. So I basically was in Hawaii.
You were stuck in Hawaii.
I was stuck in Hawaii, yeah.
Poor thing.
And I met her at a party on that Saturday when I wasn't even supposed to be there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I probably would not have met her had 9/11 not gone down. And I was
divine intervention. That's what that's called.
And we had a great time in Hawaii, and then I moved on to my next duty station, and we got married there very soon after. In fact, we got married by the Justice of the Peace before we had the real ceremony, because I wanted to bring her into the Navy, formally into the Navy community with all the benefits and support that the military offers. So
how long between when you met her and when you got? Yeah.
Oh, it was really short. I mean, it was 13 months, 14.
Really?
6 months of which I was on deployment. So it was really
it's
probably
the perfect marriage.
It was probably 6 or 7 months where I was.
And did anyone question you when you went to? Well, now she was. Question you when you went to do all your. You said to bring her in. Mm-hmm. People are like, well, wait, you're just trying to. Because some people do that. It's they get. It's not. I'm not talking about illegal alien, but some people do that because they're going out or they're going.
I'm sure there's people that exploit
overseas
that exploit the system.
Yeah,
I'm
get
sure that
married
happens.
early.
But that wasn't.
It's just love.
Yeah, that wasn't the case. I mean, there's a lot of things involved. Like for instance, if I was going to move into base housing and we're not married, she can't legally get in there, right? Or she can't even get on base for that matter, And so I knew I was
So
going to marry.
the military doesn't allow non-married people to live together?
It's not that they won't allow it; it's just they won't fund it.
Gotcha.
You know, you won't be given all the support that a spouse is typically given.
Okay.
So, and the long-term thing for me was I was going to marry this woman. So,
Right.
it wasn't even an issue for us. And then we kind of just, we bounced around in the Navy. You know, she was a very supportive military spouse. She loved it. She absolutely loved being a military spouse. She loved moving every 3 years. We lived overseas. We lived in Japan. We lived in Brazil. We lived in Florida. We lived in California, Miami, all these really great places.
A lot of moving.
Yeah.
Let's pause and reflect on that for a second, right? Because it's good you didn't have kids at that time.
Yeah, I did.
But like even now, to me, that seems exhausting to not plant your roots somewhere. Like I like traveling for a couple days, maybe a week, and then coming back home, right? Now, granted, this was in your 20s, but still, like, did you like that lifestyle?
I did. I liked it too. I liked the excitement of moving somewhere. I liked the excitement of learning a new place.
And what was it, like every 3 months, something like that?
Every 3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
Yeah, typically.
Which is even worse. Because you do kind of put some roots in.
Yeah. You know,
And
when
then you're yanked.
Yeah, I think right now I've been in Chagrin Falls almost exactly 3 years.
Are you itching?
And I'm itching. But I think this is the longest I've ever lived in a single place in my adult life. The 3 years I've been here.
Before this podcast is over,
crazy.
we're going to drill down into that psychologically for
Yeah.
Andy because, Andy's really itching to get out of here. It's like so many ways. And I think, well, let's get into it right now, actually.
Sure.
I think that you may be hardwired for a 3-year move, right? Do you think, like, when you entered your 3rd year in Chagrin Falls, you were like, I got to get... Even though Chagrin Falls, as Molly will tell you, is the greatest place on earth.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that, like, you're already, like, hardwired to, like, wheels up after 3 years?
That's a really interesting point.
Like, how many times have you done that?
Well, he just named like
dozen?
6 different places.
10, 12 times I've moved.
Dude.
In my adult life, I probably moved at least...
That's a habit.
So it might be part of my fabric now. It could be,
Yeah.
I wonder what's going to happen 3 years from now, Andrew.
That's true. But now having a kid,
a little different.
That's a whole different thing now. But I'm a pretty resilient guy. I'm able to overcome some challenges.
Did you just say you moved? Or you're moving?
He's moving
Yeah,
now.
I'm probably going to be moving here soon.
Gotcha.
To Austin, of all places.
Texas?
Just for 3 years, though. Don't worry.
He'll be back. Interesting. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're...
But that's where Mom and Pop live.
No, my parents
they
live
live in Arizona.
In Arizona, yeah. So
Okay.
I've always loved Austin since the day I left college, and it's just a really fun place. I think there's a lot of... Mostly we're moving because I need a breath of fresh air. I need to breathe some fresh air, and I'll probably, I'm sure, get into you a little bit later why I need a breath of fresh air. But and I'm really familiar with Austin. It's a fun place, and I think ultimately it provides Hank the most opportunity for him. So
We have Ohio State.
yeah, you do have Ohio State, but it's not Texas.
So you're
I
bouncing
know.
around
That's my point.
23 years in 3-year increments, different cities all over the world. What was your favorite?
Oh man, I think it's a tie between Japan and Rio de Janeiro. And those places couldn't be any more different. In Japan, we live just south of Tokyo, about 40 kilometers south of Tokyo, and everything works. Everything's on time. It's clean. There's no crime. The customer service is incredible. It's fun. And then you go to Brazil, and it's the opposite side of the spectrum. It's nothing works. Everything's broken.
Yeah.
Everything's late. There's crime like crazy.
But they don't care.
Yeah,
It's
you're
beautiful.
in Rio, and
Yeah.
that's this kind of attitude that they call them cariocas. People who are from Rio de Janeiro are called cariocas. Cariocas have this just kind of like laid back attitude.
Side note, most beautiful women in the world live in Brazil.
Do they?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I should move there.
They're all supermodels.
In Japan, we were like so impressed with how everything worked there. We were kind of down on the U.S. Like, man, things break in the U.S. We gotta get our shit together, right?
Yeah.
And then we go to Brazil, and it's the opposite end, and we're like, we got our shit together.
Yeah. Ain't so bad.
Ain't so bad. But Brazil was a wonderful experience because we were completely immersed in the culture. Before we went down there, the Navy sent Sarah and I to language school to study Portuguese. And so I went down there for grad school. So I did grad school in Portuguese, which was incredibly difficult.
Wow.
And but it forced us to be immersed in the culture. So we could watch the TV, read the newspaper, talk to people on the street, and and so it makes sense that we have lifelong dear friends that still live in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, they're Brazilian.
Do you speak a bunch of different languages right now?
Yes. Portuguese and Spanish, fluent.
Japanese?
I don't speak any Japanese. I speak enough Chinese to either get me in jail or get me out of jail, depending on what word I use incorrectly or correctly.
Depending on the crime.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Tokyo, I would imagine, just from YouTube videos, which is obviously an accurate description of
yes, that
culture.
and Facebook.
But like, just so many people. It's like, it's so crowded in Tokyo, isn't it?
It is. It's just a fascinating city. It's like a clean New York City.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a clean New York City where everything works and the people are nice. It's overwhelming. It really is.
Like I really want to go to Japan to learn about like Buddhist monks and samurai and history and stuff. But like when I think of Tokyo, the pop culture for me of Tokyo is when Americans go there, they just get lost in this sea of humanity. Like, just, I don't know, the movies and the books and it seems like a lonely place for an American because
there's so many.
There's just so many people. And you, I mean, when you think of being like one of 8 million people in New York, I don't know what Tokyo's number is, but on top, you add to that the fact that you don't speak the language. And it's just so vast and so populated.
Yeah.
And similarly, right, concrete everywhere, right? Yeah. Are there still parks and stuff and forests?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess
there's parks like they have. There's their version of Central Park. And
how long were you there? 3 years?
We were there for just short of 2 years.
So how do you live when you don't speak the language, and how do you conduct your everyday?
Well, in Japan, at least in the urban part of Japan, you can get away with not knowing Japanese. The street signs are in English and kanji, and a lot of the signs are written with English on them too. When you go out in rural Japan, then you're on your own. But in the city itself, you can get away with just English. But I think Alex is right. There is a tendency
Don't ever say that again. But he's right.
It happens once every 7 moons.
That you can get lost there, and ironically, we didn't really want to go to Japan when I got assigned there. It was pretty much shoved down my throat. I had spent a lot of my flying time in Japan already. I'd flown all over Japan, and it's not that I didn't like Japan. I'd spent a lot of time there already.
Done that.
Yeah, and then they said, "Hey, Macias, you're going to Japan. You better take it," and they just kind of shoved it down our throat. And so we went there kind of kicking and screaming, but you salute and carry out your orders. And come to find out that that's pretty much the case with just about everyone who goes to Japan, at least in the Navy. But by the time you leave Japan, you don't want to leave. You've had such a great experience there that people extend there over and over, and eventually try to homestead there. And that was the case with us. Like we were bummed out to leave, but in my case, I had no option. There's no chance for me to stay in Japan because of the occupation I had. But I know Sarah loved it. I'd go back to Japan in a second.
Yeah. All right. So at some point, well, I I'm probably going to get it wrong. So what happens next in the
Spoiler
story?
alert.
I know. What happens next in the story?
I eventually, we move around from place to place, and I eventually retired from the Navy in 2010. And my last year in the Navy, Sarah joined the U.S. State Department, and she was a special agent. She was with the Bureau of Diplomatic Security. So they do a number of things, but primarily one of the things they do, or their primary mission is they provide personal protection to the Secretary of State. So much like the President has the Secret Service, the Secretary of State has diplomatic security. And so Sarah was on endless amounts of details where she was protected.
And who was the Secretary of State at this time?
At that time, when she was doing that job, it was Hillary Clinton was the Sec State. So she would tell me stories of how she's driving around in the car, and she'd be on the phone with Bill Clinton talking about what happened that day. And a funny thing is, this is kind of funny. I think I should share this with you. Again, this is my last year in the Navy, and I'm working in Miami, my last duty station. I get a phone call from Sarah, who was in, I think, El Salvador or Honduras. I don't remember which country in Central America she was located, but she was there with Hillary Clinton, and Sarah was driving her limo, and a couple things happened on that trip. The first one, Sarah is outside the limo, and Secretary Clinton is inside doing one of her meetings, and Sarah walks out. She's waiting by the car, and she drops the keys through the grate and into the what do you call it, the gutter, right? And she's trying to fish out the keys
with chewing gum, right? You're supposed to use chewing gum for that in a paper clip.
What are you, MacGyver?
No, I saw it. I saw it in the movie. Yeah.
So Sarah's like, oh my God, I got to get these keys out from this gutter.
Oh my!
And she was like desperately trying to get these keys, and some police officer saw her struggling and had some kind of something, and he fished out the keys from the gutter and handed them to Sarah. And like 5 minutes later, Secretary Clinton comes out ready to go, right? And so she is obviously completely oblivious to what had just happened. But had that guy not shown up, Sarah probably would not have had a very good career in diplomatic
I think
security.
Clinton would have had a sense of humor about that.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she would have been cool with it.
And on that same trip, she was in a different country, and this time she calls me to my office in Miami, and she goes, "Oh, holy shit! You're not gonna believe what just happened." I'm like, what happened? She goes, "Well, I'm driving the limo, and Hillary Clinton she's walking down the steps out of her meeting, and she slips, and she falls on her elbow, and all Sarah hears is, oh, and that's Hillary Clinton screaming because she fell on her elbow." And Sarah's like, yeah, she broke her elbow. And this is like as it's happening. And, a few hours later, I'm watching CNN or whatever, and Hillary Clinton's wearing this sling because she had just broken her elbow in Honduras or wherever it was. So that was kind of funny,
Oh, my God.
So I retired out of the Navy, and we kind of made this drug deal where, I started following her around in her career. So we kind of swapped roles.
Let's rephrase. He did not make a drug deal with anybody.
Andy says drug deal whenever he talks to the Uber driver about stuff.
So I had this agreement that when I retired, I would follow her in her career, and so that's what I did. I followed her, and it was very much the same kind of lifestyle. We moved every 2-3 years.
So you were a stay-at-home.
I was a stay-at-home husband. Yeah. And we at this point we didn't have Hank yet, but I stayed at home and supported her career, and eventually, we moved to D.C. after Miami, and then after D.C. we moved to Beijing, where she was assigned to the U.S. Embassy in China. So that's what took us to China. We moved to China in 2013. 3 years after I retired from the Navy, and so we were posted in China, and it was a really great experience. Hank was there. He was not even a year old when we moved to Beijing, and we left a couple years later for very unfortunate circumstances, but But by the time we left, he wasn't able to speak Chinese, but he certainly understood it.
Right.
We had a lady who would come to our house every other day or so, and labor is really cheap there, so she would cook meals for us and obviously clean our house and stuff like that.
That's a true stay-at-home husband and dad right there.
You gotta contract that shit out, man.
Yeah. As he's staying home doing nothing.
And she spoke to him in Chinese, and so by the time we left, he could understand it. He couldn't speak it, but the other children in our neighborhood, the other Americans, their kids were completely fluent.
Because are you on a base or something there?
No. The State Department contracts out a neighborhood of homes, and they assigned the diplomats to those homes. So we were right in the middle of downtown Beijing, in this neighborhood with Americans.
Wow. And
they all worked at the embassy. Did
you like Beijing?
It was fascinating being there. It's amazing how different our cultures are, and it's amazing how much we don't understand them and they don't understand us. And the thing that blew me away is just the sheer number of people. It's fascinating just how many people are there. There's this, what they say in China, like, if you're good at something, if you're really good at something, and you're like 1 in a million, and you're 1 in a million good at something, well, there's still like 1,400 other people just like you.
Oh my gosh!
Because it's so populated. There's 1.4 billion people.
Got bad pollution over there too.
Yeah, it's everything you read about. Everything you read about, it's that bad. Yeah.
So does Sarah get sick in China?
Yeah, she was diagnosed with intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, which is also called bile duct cancer, and it occurs in the liver, and it's a cousin to pancreatic cancer. So it's not. The prognosis isn't very good for something like that, and it wasn't for us.
How did she even know she had it?
She had, just the telltale signs for cholangiocarcinoma, which include, side pain. Her skin started itching. She was a little bit jaundiced in her eyes. She was starting to retain water in her abdomen, which is called ascites, which is a symptom of your liver not working properly. And so, we had her checked out, and they told us, hey, there's some spots on her liver. We think you need to get checked out. So the State Department said, all right, Macias family, we're shipping you stateside. You tell us where you need to go for treatment, and we'll send you there, and you got 3 days to do it.
Wow.
So we had 3 days to pack all our stuff, for Sarah to wrap up all her projects at the embassy, for us to research where to even go. Right. And we chose the clinic here, the Cleveland Clinic, for various reasons. And so we came here to Cleveland for her to get treated at the clinic.
First time to Ohio?
No. My Sarah was best friends with my cousin who lives across the street from me. So
he is a member of the Bay Area Minute Leisure Society.
He is a member
one of the founding members.
And so we had come to Chagrin Falls pretty much 5 or 6 times before we ever lived here.
Okay.
We'd come here mostly for Blossom.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the factors of our decision to come to Cleveland, was Sarah was so close to my cousin's wife. So we came here. We got settled in, and she started getting treatment at the clinic. But this is a really rare cancer, and the one thing I learned about cancer is that, especially cancers that are not as ubiquitous as, say, like breast cancer, right? Is in this type of rare cancer, you need to go where the expertise resides. And in our case, the expertise, of course we didn't know this at the time, resides at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, or Sloan Kettering in New York City, or the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. Those are probably the 3 places you want to be, but we didn't know that. Cleveland Clinic just doesn't see enough of these types of patients. So she wasn't really making much progress here. So we started going to MD Anderson in Houston, and she got enrolled in a clinical trial that was just working. I mean, it was amazing how well it worked, and it shrunk her cancer in half. And for the first time, we were experiencing some hope, And
was she like doing chemo that entire time?
She was, and we eventually had to take her off chemo because her liver couldn't tolerate it. It was exacerbating the issue, really. So Willie and Sarah's case, it wasn't so much the cancer that was the issue. It was her failing liver that was the issue. So, and chemo was exacerbating it. So this trial in Houston was a different type of therapy that didn't involve chemotherapy, and it was way more effective than chemotherapy. For a while there, we started experiencing some hope. And then, her liver eventually just failed, and that's how she passed. But, even though the trial didn't save her life, I'm very, very thankful for it because it gave her about six high-quality months of life where, she just wasn't alive for being alive's sake. She was a mom again. Mm-hmm. She was driving. She went back to work as a federal agent. She was going to Houston on her own without me anymore. She was doing really well. And that trial afforded that. Mm-hmm. And we never would have had... It's not uncommon for people to really suffer with this type of cancer, and Sarah didn't experience any of that. And I'm forever thankful for that. But, sometimes, you get dealt really shitty cards in life, and you got to play the hand as best you can. And would
you give it up for anything, though?
No. If I knew from day one that she was going to pass away from cancer, I would have said, sign me up. Mm-hmm. Sign me up. It's just you learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about your spouse. You learn so much about your family and your friends when you go through an experience like that. And one thing I also learned is that, going through a cancer journey like that, you feel like you're on the moon. You feel like you're the only person on Earth who's ever going through this, right? And after she passed away, it took me a few months to finally realize that, man, every single day out there, every day people are experiencing just unspeakable devastation, whether it's cancer or whatever it could be. And I just was not, my eyes weren't open to that. And when she passed, I'm hypersensitive to it now. And it makes me, every day I'm reminded about there's someone out there who is just experiencing the worst thing you could possibly think. So it makes me realize that I'm not the only person who's bearing this cross, I'm not the only person who's gone through this. And
the trick is always to remember it. Remember to have that perspective. That's right. The problem, I'm convinced, with most people on this planet who get unreasonably stressed out over trivial things, right? Is that we are built through 70 million years of evolutionary history to only remember what just happened and what's happening in front of us. I mean, it doesn't take long to forget that you've got it pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And that somebody...
If you do.
Right. But you've almost, certainly between the three of us and most people here in...
For sure.
Tropical Chagrin Falls, Ohio, have it really good compared to the other 99% of the planet, right?
How long was the... from when she was diagnosed to when she passed away?
9 months.
9 months. Wow.
Yeah.
And my dad passed away. He
I'm
had
sorry.
stomach cancer. My mom was 32. He was 36, and there were 4 of us.
Oh my
so
gosh.
a lot of this was, and it was 6 months after he was diagnosed.
Wow.
So a lot of that.
So you're
kind of
painfully
comment.
familiar with this.
Yeah, I mean, I was 3, so I didn't know him. I mean, I don't remember him whatsoever, but certainly through my mom's journey of just everything, that whole life of being a single parent. And
Is your mom still alive?
No, she just passed away 2
sorry.
years ago. So
I'm sorry. I've spoken to many other parents who are raising their children after their spouse passed away, and one thing kind of common to all of us. One thing common to all of us is you think that you're raising your son, or you think you're raising your kid, right? You think that you're providing for them and that they need you and they're dependent on you. in reality, it's the other way around, is that they're raising you. And in your case, I wonder if your mom would agree with that it was actually you and your siblings that were giving her support and kept her going.
Sure. I'm sure she would definitely say that. I think it's probably a little bit of both, too.
Yeah.
That's a really great observation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chills.
your kids really tell you what kind of person you are and what kind of resilience you have and what kind of self-discipline you have.
Yeah.
You know, you're absolutely right.
And in Hank's case, you know, I still have days where I you know, I just have a bad day, and Hank will come up to me and he'll hug me and he'll say, "Dad, it's gonna be okay." You know, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about your dad's invention now.
Yeah.
We'll be done in a few minutes, okay?
Yeah.
Why don't you ask Miss Nellie because of the drink, okay?
She is. I'll get it for you. I'll get it.
Hank, do you know what your dad's invention's called? I'm asking you.
What's my tent called?
Gutter
Hey,
pee.
talk into this microphone right here.
Yeah.
Tell Miss Molly about the gutter pee.
Tell me what it's called. Gutter pee?
Nice shot.
Oh.
He's really shy.
All right.
So you take all this, and how do we go from there to the big E word? Alex, what's the E word?
Entrepreneur. You know, something that also, when I say you find out a lot about yourself when you go through an experience like this, is that your way of dealing with pain. And in my case, it wasn't until recently being a few weeks ago, that it finally occurred to me that the way I deal with pain is I build things. I try to go and build constructive things.
I eat mine. Seriously.
You eat
I eat my pain and my stress. And Alex, what did he say?
Yeah.
He I forget what else. I totally eat my pain.
Some people, drink. Some people exercise. Some people meditate. Some people.
I wish I exercised.
You know, and in my case,
you build.
I just build things, and I think it exercises my mind. It challenges me. It requires me to think a lot, and so I started building things. And one of the first things I started building was this tent, right? And
were you at a game where that like, what was the? I mean, you don't just wake up and say, "I'm going to build a tent."
Yeah, you're right. When I retired from the Navy, I had a little party rental company that I started as a hobby while Sarah was working, and I used to rent party rental equipment, but specifically for tailgaters. So people would rent cornhole and.
So now you do like those Buckeye fans.
Yeah. Yes. In this regard, I do. Yes.
Yes.
So one of the things I used to rent were those 10 by 10 tents that people use for tailgating, and these things would always come back broken. The rain would cause them to collapse, and water collects on top of them when it starts raining, and you have to push the water off. And I got tired of fixing my tents.
Never done that. No.
And so I figured, hey, I can make a better mousetrap. So I sat down with some paper and I drew it out, and I bought a sewing machine and watched some YouTube videos and taught myself how to sew. And I built a tent that had a gutter system in it. And I built two of them, actually, two prototypes. And they were the ugliest things you ever see in your life, but they worked. And so I started knocking on doors to try to find someone who could build it for me in a professional manufacturing
prettier way.
Yeah. And eventually found a company in China that does it for me now. So that was the
Alex said you actually went to China to find. So the knocking on the doors wasn't your neighbors. This was going on manufacturing knocking.
Absolutely. It started off contacting domestic companies, and when you're a little company working in your basement, easy up.
Opening the door.
They're not going to answer your phone call. They're not going to open your doors, right? So
I watch Shark Tank, so I know all about this.
Yeah.
You sound exactly like somebody that would be on there.
They don't give you the time of day. And I caught a break with a guy who said, "Hey, Andy, I can't do this for you, but tell you what, here's what I can do. I can introduce you to a manufacturer in Shanghai, and I happen to be going out there. I being the guy I'm talking to, about. And so I said, well, hey, I'll go with you. So him and I flew to Shanghai, and he took me to his manufacturer, and I took my ugly prototype, and they kind of looked at it, and they immediately got it, and they're kind of like fascinated with it when they first looked at it. And they said, come back in 2 hours. So we went and had lunch. I came back in 2 hours, and they had one built like that.
Oh my gosh.
Like that, And it didn't work exactly the way
right.
that I wanted to. But
for 2 hours.
For having never seen this thing, and then 2 hours later have a version 1 of it, it was amazing. So, I worked with them, and they made a few different more. After a few iterations, they finally got it right. And so now I have it made in China. I have it made in China, and now it's just a matter of working the other side of the coin, which is selling them, which is probably harder than building it, the actual selling.
We have somebody that we want to connect. And
the Shark Tank thing?
But Jeff Hoffman,
Yeah.
they need to connect.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was one thing that I used to, when I said I build things to deal with the grief. And I started volunteering for the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation as well. And I started building things for them. I built a mentorship program, so that when you're newly diagnosed, you don't feel like you're on the moon the way we did.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
do you mentor them? Do you participate in that?
One thing they don't tell you, I don't, and I'll tell you why that's the case. One thing they don't tell you in the brochures about grief is that right around year 2 is when it hits home.
Trust me. Mm-hmm.
Is when it hits home. Year 1, you're kind of still figuring. You're numb. Mm-hmm. And so year 1 is when I was building all these things, and is when I built their mentorship program that they it's called Cholangio Connect, and basically it connects people, newly diagnosed patients, with people who are familiar with the disease, whether they're patients or caregivers. And at the 2-year point, I couldn't do it anymore. It was interfering with my recovery, with my moving on with my life.
Recovery.
And so I handed the program off to someone else, and they've grown it to this thing now where there's 50 people.
Wow.
That are mentoring. And I just started. I mean, it was a year ago I started this thing. And when I handed it off, there was probably 3 people that had joined, that signed up as mentors. Now they have 50.
Wow.
And so it's growing, and it's serving a purpose, and it's helping people. And
that's awesome.
And so I'm really proud of that. And
that's awesome.
But I think eventually in the future I may go back. But right now I'm focused on raising my son. And then I started this other thing too that...
Wait, before we get off that,
mm-hmm.
Is it difficult for you to be around cancer patients at all?
No, it's not difficult for me to be around cancer patients. I guess what's difficult for me is it's more difficult for me to read the stories on the Facebook groups. That's harder for me than actually meeting people and talking to them in person.
What does that mean? What's happening on the Facebook posts?
People tend to you're not able to dialogue with them really freely like you can when you're in person. You don't get the sense of, you don't look at their eyes, you don't see you don't really get a sense of what they're going through. And you really can't help them when you read something on Facebook. When you're in person, it's much easier to share their situation.
So part of the reason I asked that question is because I know from talking to psychologists and grief counselors that being alone is bad, right? When you're grieving, you need some alone time, but you really don't want to be just inside your own head as much as possible. You need to talk, you need to express, you need to listen, you need to interact with other humans.
Sure.
Right? Which is why support groups are there. So were you doing that?
I did go to, I went through therapy, and I didn't really do the support groups. I did it, a little bit, but I didn't really find it all that helpful because in my experience, what people want to talk about is that they want to talk about, you feel like you're on the moon. You feel like you're the only person who's gone through this. Even when you're in a support group with other people who are experiencing the same thing, you still feel like you're the only person who's experienced this. So when you go in a support group, they typically just want to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And they're just in transmit mode. They're not in receive mode. So I didn't really get too much out of that because it just heard people just talking about their situation. And that just wasn't very helpful for me. For me, it was, I felt better if I was actually doing something tangible, something that would help somebody. And so I took that attitude, and so I started pouring all my effort into the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, which it was my way of dealing with it.
Right.
I know other people who didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole because it would be too difficult for them to volunteer.
But that's kind of a support group, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, as a support group comprised entirely of people who went through the exact same thing you did and were survivors and were family members.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Of cancer patients who had that particular cancer. So you really were surrounded by people who were going through or went through the same thing
that's true.
That you did, right?
That is true. Yeah. Yeah. And
did you find that to be helpful?
I did find it to be helpful, but what I found more helpful was the fact that, hey, I'm doing something to help somebody.
Daddy,
Yeah.
why are you in here?
He's asking himself that same question.
So, little Big Bang Kank, we were at yours truly before he came here.
Oh.
And I told him we were going to Mr. Alex's office.
Did you get nacho fries?
And he says, where does Mr. Alex work? And I said, well, he just works around the corner. And he goes, what does his office look like? He's like, well, he's got an office and he's got, people that work there. And he goes, you mean Mr. Alex is the boss? And I said, yeah, Mr. Alex is the boss. And
We let him think that,
I know,
Hank.
you'd be surprised.
And then he goes, and then he says, you mean he just sits there and does nothing?
That's right.
Hank is
That's
so
what
intuitive.
The boss does.
He's so intuitive.
Remember you said that to me at the restaurant? And I started laughing, and you didn't know why I started laughing?
Did Daddy say, Hank, did your dad say, yes, that's exactly what Mr. Alex does all day? Nothing.
Yep. We're still trying to figure it out. No.
No, he works really hard.
He's the hardest working man.
So I think in my case, like I said, getting back, making full circle, is I tend to build things, and that is how
That's your therapy.
that's my therapy. Yeah.
So if you go into Andy's house and you turn the corner, what you see are these prototypes of gutter peas everywhere, right? And all different sizes. Usually there's at least one fully, I don't know, what extracted
Deployed.
or fully deployed, right? And if you haven't seen a gutter pea, I encourage you to go to gutterpea.com.
And why the name?
Andrew?
Well, I was spending too much time trying to think of a name, way too much time, and I finally said, I'm just gonna get the word gutter and the word canopy and smash them together.
God.
And I came up with gutter pea, and nobody likes it. have yet to meet someone who says that's a great name.
Here, I thought it was because the rain pees off of the.
Interesting. No, but listen, you know what? You were at my Blossom Time party last year.
I wasn't. Thank you for inviting me.
Torrential downpour, right?
Yes.
And we went, Andy and I in his truck went all through my neighborhood collecting up canopy tents, because we knew this big storm was coming.
You were at our house.
Yeah, that's right. You lent us one.
Yes.
The gutter pea was the last man standing after that
Of course
tsunami.
it was.
Yeah. Like everything came down. Your guys's was pretty big.
You
too.
didn't do it. I don't think you put ours up.
Didn't we?
I don't think so.
No,
was
because
big,
yours
but-
is like a pole tent, right? It's pole.
Yeah,
All these
right.
It was
different
a,
pieces.
a
Yeah.
port.
That's right. We did not.
For
I
the
was
cars.
thinking of Bill Burtman's. The point is, the gutter pea
Is get a gutter pea.
Is what
And
it
can
says
you buy
it
a
is.
gutter pea on the website?
You can.
Okay.
But I'm going to.
Is it patent pending? That's something they
is.
always ask on
is
Shark
patent
Tank.
It is patent pending.
And do patents run out?
After 20 years.
Okay.
After 20 years. So.
Years.
So the design, because that's the other thing they'll say, design and
I have a utility patent on this one.
Yeah, that's what they
So
ask.
like a design patent would be something like hold on a second. So like, let's say you take a Coke bottle that has a very distinct shape, right? And let's say you made your Molly's tea, and you decided to put it in a bottle shaped like a Coke bottle.
okay.
You would get sued to next year because you're infringing on their design patent.
But then Pepsi bottle looks like a Coke bottle.
Well,
It's been more than 20 years.
it's been there you go.
Yeah.
Well, do you then own it, or do you have to reapply for it?
I think
No,
after 20 years, it's out on the street.
It's fair game
It's
for
fair game,
anybody.
yeah.
Oh.
So you see it you see a lot of like
It's 21 years, by the way.
21. So you see it like in the pharmaceutical
You
community.
attorney?
You'll see stuff like all of a sudden all these generic drugs come on the market right about the 21 year point, because the patent for that particular drug has expired, and people are just waiting to chop at
So
the bit.
what is the state or whatever you're filing a patent from? Is it you better make your money in 21 years or so be it?
You get a monopoly for 21 years. Nobody can infringe on your patent during that time.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, you want to license it to other inventors or manufacturers. You want to have distributors selling it for you. Any way you can make money off of your
We
invention.
need to get this gutter pea out there to.
Well, it's the thing of it is, it really is. It's a great product. I mean, I've seen it, I've used it, and Andy's talking to. I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I'm gonna.
Spoiler alert.
Andy's talking to marketing people, because you can put your logo on it, including the Gertzberg Law Firm logo, which is going on one of these very soon.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And you take it to places, and when in that storm, when yours is the last canopy standing, it's going to
Right?
have your business's
Damn
name on it.
straight. I
You know?
love that.
Yeah.
Why don't we have a canopy at one of the concerts in the park?
Why don't we, Molly? That's
Well,
a great
because maybe
idea.
they're not chamber members yet, but they will be.
Gutter
And then
Pea
we'll have
needs
a
to-
gutter pea.
Gotta put my name
You know,
Well, he's leaving us, though.
Well, you know,
Oof.
I just recently went to a trade show in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, and there were other companies out there that have tents, but they're just a normal tent. Yet these are really well-established companies that have a strong foothold in this industry.
Right.
And for me to break into that industry is going to be incredibly difficult, even if it is a different
Can you
product.
hand it off to them?
Yes and no. No, because they don't want to incur any risk until this product has been completely fleshed out and all the risk has been washed out.
Mm-hmm.
They want a product that's you give them on a silver platter and they take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there yet. So again, they're not giving me the time of day.
And they can't
No, they can't. They can't.
copy
They
it.
can't copy. Well, I suppose
Well,
they
actually, we
could.
want them to. right?
You know,
Because then we can get money from them.
A tactic that a lot of companies do is they say, okay, well, I'm just going to copy you anyways, and I'm just going to outlawyer you. Then you get that's a
but
tactic.
we got him, so we're good.
Right, I got you, man.
We're good.
Friends and family, right?
Yeah.
So, but one thing I did learn from this trade show in Vegas is like how difficult it's going to be to break in. So I am going to launch a Kickstarter campaign to help with the marketing effort. And so you'll be seeing that on the street here probably in the next few months. I initially was going to do that. A year ago, I was going to launch a Kickstarter, but I kind of talked myself out of it.
Afraid to give up portions of the company?
No, because you don't do that. You don't give up any control on Kickstarter. It's a lot of work to launch a Kickstarter campaign, and it's not necessarily indicative of the true market either, because not everybody is on Kickstarter. So,
aren't there angel foundations?
Oh, there are. There are angel funders and
but they
VCs.
take equity.
They take equity.
Okay.
Sure. So I think now I have the supply chain in place. I have a manufacturer. I have all the infrastructure set up now where I can launch a Kickstarter campaign and fulfill orders. A year ago, I probably wasn't there to do that. So I think now I've decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign. So that'll be coming out sometime before summer.
Andy, before we go to the lightning round questions, so brace yourself.
Okay.
Because they're badass.
Earth shattering.
What do you love about being an entrepreneur, and what do you hate about it? What's the scariest thing about it, or the most frustrating thing about it?
The most frustrating thing about it is no one takes you serious until they have to, you know? Once the thing works, you're a genius, but until it works, you're this crazy guy, right? The other thing, I don't think people really understand risks. I don't think people really appreciate how the average business person, the average business owner, how much risk that person incurs just to have their business in period, just running. There's people's livelihood is depending on that. People's businesses are depending on other businesses, and there's business owners oftentimes don't take paychecks. They're the first ones to suck it up before they ever not pay someone on payroll. And I like the idea of taking a product, an idea on a napkin, and the challenge of bringing it to market. I find that really challenging. I find it exercises my mind, and I think it's a legitimate product. I think it solves a problem, and that's how any product really starts.
That's what Mr. Wonderful wants. That's what he asks. Doesn't solve a problem.
I think I get crushed on Shark Tank.
He's an ass.
Yeah, he is.
He never invests in anything.
Well, here, so let me put two fine points on what you just said. So number one, what I love about Andy's story is how the creation, the idea for the Gutter Pea started about 2 companies earlier, right? And so he's out there tailgating and renting the equipment and looking around, and he sees that there's a need out there and it's not being fulfilled. So he tweaks it a little bit, and he tweaks it some more, and then he starts messing around with different distribution channels and then at some point the eureka moment happens. It's like, I can do this. I can make something that no one else is making. And he calls me, and then I get a patent lawyer to him, and now he's got a provisional patent, and this thing is he's the only one that can make it, right? No one else on the planet is allowed to make the Gutter Pea other than Andy, so long as the provisional patent becomes permanent patent. Mm-hmm. But the story of improving on yourself and improving on on unmet needs is what America is all about. It's what all entrepreneurship is. So I love that, and I love that happened here.
And I love the fact that it kind of all stemmed off of what could have been a hide in the corner put your head in between your knees and don't come out of your bedroom for years.
Exactly.
And instead, he took it to paper.
Right. And then the other piece of it is like, and I know this because we talk constantly. Like, so Andy's kind of like my sounding board for Cover My Six also, right? There is this journey that entrepreneurs go through, and it is rocky and it is dark sometimes and it's lonely. And when you're, in my case, you're worried about making payroll. When you're in Andy's case, you're like, I'm putting every ounce of energy and time I have into this, and that's time that I may not be spending with Hank, or that's time that's a ton of money. I know you've spent a ton of money on this already, right? And so what non-business owner, so this is a lot of your members, Molly, right? What a lot of all of them have in common is that they give it everything they've got, right? And what people who are not in that position don't realize is that there's this continuum, and on one far end is safety and security, and on the other far end is risk, right? And on the safety and security side, you're working for somebody else generally, right? You're getting a steady paycheck, and you just have this job that you've got to do, and you just got to do it well, and you're going to keep getting paid generally, right? There's kind of a ceiling there. Right? You can get promoted by percentages. On the far other end, on the risk side, is unlimited upside. You can hit the lottery with your invention, right? Sure. You can be a bazillionaire if you do it right, but you've got no safety net, right, if you're over there. Because all that time that you're spending on the gutter pee, you could be spending for an employer and getting that safety, that safe, secure paycheck. And so I think that in some cases, the entrepreneur is a gambler, right?
Risk taker.
Yeah. But in other cases, the other perspective is that they just really, 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 really believe in themselves, you know?
It's true.
To the point where they're willing to sacrifice all that time and all that money on themselves and give up safety and security nets. You know,
I often hear like they use this term in the entrepreneurial world. You're just trying to earn enough money to get your ransom money, and what they mean by ransom money is that you accumulate enough wealth that you don't have to depend on a salary anymore. You're free from that. Yeah. And so entrepreneurs are really kind of looking for that. You know, just they want.
Aren't we all looking for
that? Free themselves from that, you know.
The other one I hear is they're just trying to make enough to no longer be in debt.
Yeah.
Right? Because
that's more like me.
All they're doing is digging their hole until their product makes it out there.
Yeah. Yes. You know, it takes, you know, it takes persistence. It takes, and not everyone is cut out for it. You know, some people aren't risk takers, and you know. In my case, I'm somewhat lucky, or very lucky, in the fact that I'm retired, and I did, you know, through investments and retirement, I'm able to afford the opportunity to do this full time without having to work. So, but that's not really the case for most entrepreneurs. That's hardly ever the case.
Right.
You know? So in that regard, I'm kind of lucky. But it's also kind of a detriment because my back's not against the wall.
Right.
I'm not forced to do things, you know.
The hustle maybe a little bit.
But it's still your time, because I remember when I asked you the other day, I said, do you ever just like look around and think, man, am I totally wasting my time right now? And you're like, all the time. I think the same thing, right? Constantly.
Yeah.
Because that's time that you don't get back.
Right.
Once that time is used up, it's gone.
So you're going to lose your best friend. You're going to lose your bestie.
I'm bummed out.
Hey, one funny thing, one of the things that really solidified this idea was when I first started first started messing around with this concept. And the first thing I did was I built a tent out of trash bags. Like I cut up a bunch of trash bags, garbage bags, and I taped it all together with this design, and I made a tent with a gutter system taped together out of trash bags. and it worked, right? So then I figured, okay, I'm going to do the next step and make a real prototype. Well, right about that time, we had a block party in our cul-de-sac. So, I have all these tents in my basement from my previous rental company. And so I'm the tent guy in my neighborhood. So whenever anyone needs tents, they come knock on my door, and I have all these tents. So I went out there and I set up all these tents.
The crazy tent guys.
Right.
But these are just conventional tents. This is before a gutter P was even made. So we're out there, and I have all these tents set up, and it starts pouring, like really pouring. And we're running into the tent, and Alex makes the comment, man, these tents are really holding up really well. They're, it's raining hard, and these tents are holding up well. 5 seconds later, maybe 5 seconds later, the tent just completely collapses. It sprays water over everybody, all over the food.
Yeah.
And that right then I said, I got to make this thing happen.
I need to do this.
I got to do this.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, kids. You ready for the lightning round? Mm-hmm. Lightning round questions? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right.
I'm ready, Alex.
I've been thinking about mixing them up this time. Again, Molly, I don't know if I like mine anymore. Why don't you go first?
I love mine.
All right, you go.
What are you binging?
I am binging The Office.
Oh,
on Netflix.
Good one.
But from the beginning, though.
Good, yes.
Yes, because I think the first ones are hilarious. So I'm binging that lately, yeah.
And what's on your mind?
Our move to Austin.
Okay.
Getting Hank enrolled in school, picking out of school, wondering if I'm screwing our lives up, not knowing what I'm doing. Basically, what every parent goes through, not knowing what they're doing. So that's heavily on my mind right now. Yeah.
Your questions aren't as good as mine, but
no,
go
they're
ahead.
definitely not. I think I'm going to revert back to some of the original ones.
You know what? You do your thing. They'll never be as good as mine. So.
Andrew, what would you consider to have been your biggest failure at any point? And you can define failure in whatever positive spin or negative spin you want.
Okay. This one's really personal, and I'm comfortable saying it now, but that hasn't always been the case. I flew in the Navy, obviously, and I wanted to be an astronaut, and I had high hopes and high dreams, and I got accepted to test pilot school, and I went to Patuxent River, Maryland, for U.S. Naval Test Pilot School, and these are where the, all naval astronauts go through Naval Test Pilot School. That's the thing you have to do, and so I'm there, and I'm with all these other guys, fighter guys, and all these former astronauts that have gone through U.S. Naval Test Pilot School, and I failed out. I failed out of test pilot school, and I was so ashamed. And Alex, I tell you, I carried that for 8, 9, 10 years. That I couldn't even talk to people about it. I was so ashamed of it. Until it finally occurred to me that, you know what, I shot for the moon. I went for it, and it didn't pan out. But you know what, I fell on my face, but I picked myself up, and I moved on. And I later on, that served me really well in terms of Sarah's cancer fight. Being able to pick yourself up in the face of getting your teeth smashed in. I had already experienced that.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think you were fixated on it for 10 years?
The naval aviation is extraordinarily competitive. So I think there's that aspect of it, that what are my colleagues thinking of me? There was a little bit of that. I felt I let Sarah down, I felt, that had I made it through test pilot school, I'm not necessarily saying I would have been an astronaut, but who knows what other opportunities could have led from that.
Had you identified with that as what your image of a successful Andy Macias is prior to that?
Yeah, I think I let it become part of my identity.
Yeah. So that's my theory, right? So so lately I've been thinking about this one case a lot. And the fact that for about a full year after the judgment came down in this one case, and it was the only case I ever lost, right? I couldn't think about anything else. It was just like, and my brain just involuntarily like clicked over to that, to like, second guessing myself and all the things that, may or may not have led up to this judgment, and a perfect record before then, and I think that's it. I think what I now realize is that I had always identified being being successful myself as a successful lawyer as being a lawyer with a perfect record, right? And the more people I talked to after that, the more they were like, dude, that's crazy, right? The more cases you try, the more chances are that you're going to lose.
See, that's why I fail all the time.
Yeah, but no,
I never have that far.
But that's the thing. It's like, I know that, and I know as an entrepreneur, you welcome failure, you invite failure, you try to fail forward fast all the time.
Absolutely.
But I think it's that identification. I think it's once you create an image in your mind of, this is who I am. I am this
box.
This person, and when that doesn't happen, it rocks you to your core.
Absolutely.
And then you really start to worry, because I was really worried about what other people would think and what other clients would think, what my employees would think.
Oh, sure.
You were going through that too.
Sure. After test pilot school, that was 2003. I never flew again in the Navy after that. I had no.
Is that right?
I had no desire to fly. I had lost any motivation to fly. And I actually went into a whole different part of the Navy. I went into a whole different section of the Navy.
Wow.
Which actually opened up a whole 10 other doors of opportunity that I never knew was there.
So is the regret that you didn't pass, or is the regret at how you dealt with it afterwards? Or both? Or neither?
I guess the regret is that I didn't do whatever it took to pass.
Do you think that's true?
I don't think that's true.
You're just telling yourself.
I just tell myself that because when I was going through it, I was working my ass off, and it's just a really, really hard thing.
Yeah.
And guys that come from my type of platform aren't typically the guys that go do these kinds of things. The guys that go through test pilot school are usually like from other types of fighter platforms, attack platforms, those kinds of things. My community doesn't have very many P3 guys that go through there. And so you get tossed into this environment that you have really no experience in whatsoever, yet your colleagues going through it with you have 10 years of that experience, right? So I do regret not making it through, but what I'm very proud of is the fact that how I picked myself up and we found even more opportunity because of that.
Right.
Because of that, because of that experience, I was exposed to the whole other side of the Navy, which sent me to grad school in Brazil, which taught me Portuguese, which then put me in this whole other foreign area officer, political military type of environment that I never would have been exposed to, which exposed Sarah to the State Department. So then Sarah got a career in the State Department going. All this because it evolved from me failing out of test pilot school.
A lot of the podcasts you listen to that I listen to, a common theme you hear from like the billionaires and just the entrepreneurs and anybody who's like in their 50s, 60s, had several businesses already. The common theme you hear is, I wish I had not stressed out so much earlier in life, at those failures. Yeah. And I mean, I'm 42, right? You're 45?
48.
You're 48, Molly. You're 37.
Mm-hmm.
So
with a couple years after that.
But I feel like it's just now, right, at 42, that I'm realizing that all that stress that I carried for that long, whether it's from that case or from something else, those were moments that I'm never getting back, right?
That's a couple times you've said that already.
Yeah.
That's
Well, it's just
powerful to you.
It's powerful to me, and the reason I keep repeating it is because I want to always remember it.
Right.
You know, because those are units of time that are gone, and you spent them stressing out.
Right.
And it was never, and you were stressing out over things that turned out to be fine.
Right. And I think it's my thing that I drill into me is tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Right.
And I think that's probably the same thing.
Yeah.
Kind of the same, just saying it differently. Right. That you got to.
Right.
Sure.
Focus on it now.
I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for being resilient. We certainly give little kids credit, but I don't think we give ourselves enough credit.
Right.
Because we're incredibly resilient.
We're awesome.
We are awesome.
We're amazing.
Speaking of amazing, the final lightning round question is probably the deepest one that you'll answer pretty much your entire life.
I think we should get Hank in here for this question.
Out of the
mouth of babes.
I think we might get a different answer from Andy.
Exactly.
Andy, what is an embarrassing thing about yourself that nobody knows about?
Like right now?
Right now.
What's an embarrassing thing about myself that no one knows about?
Could be something that's happened in your past.
I had a pretty embarrassing thing happen to me once.
Let's hear it.
Okay.
Bust it out, man.
Okay, but this was back when I was in college.
Right? Oh, those are the best.
Okay, so this is back in the day before there's ATMs weren't really as prevalent as they are now. And this is back in the day where you could still go to the teller and deposit your check. And
you still can do that. Just FYI. There's a lot of tellers out there waiting for your checks. Trust me.
Okay, all right, I get it. So I used to go to this one bank, and there was this really cute girl that worked at the bank, and I would always try to kind of position myself in line so that when her thing came up, I would be there and I'd be in her line, and it never worked, ever worked. And one day I was there, and they called next, and I found myself right in front of this really cute girl, and completely unprepared. And she said something to me, probably, "How can I help you?" And I tried to pretend like it was funny. And I went like that, and this dry booger flew out of my nose and landed right in front of us, right?
That's outstanding.
And she did this thing. Yeah.
What landed one in front of us?
A boogie flew out of my nose.
Yes, right out of your dad's nose.
So I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, did she see this? We're going to go home soon.
Right after this story, perfect timing.
Hank, this is a critical part of the story. How do you play that off?
So I'm trying to play it off, right? And thinking, well, maybe she didn't see that. And she's looking at me like this, and she goes, she looks at the table, looking right at it, and then back at me, and I try to cover it with my checkbook. and I never, ever went back inside that bank again.
So now I understand why you said that you just never deposit in front of anybody anymore.
I'd either mail it in or I would
scan it.
Or that was incredibly embarrassing.
Fantastic. What is her name? And let's get her on the podcast.
You know what? I bet you anything she's on somebody else's podcast telling that same story to somebody.
Yes.
I have one more embarrassing moment. This was as I was getting out of the Navy.
By the way, this is what's great about Andy. Andy's like, I got two of them. Let's go.
There was I was the aide to a 4-star general officer, my last job in the Navy, and so basically, I was like his little personal assistant guy, right? I'd take notes at meetings, or I would, carry his briefcases. I was basically his bitch, right? But he would have all these really high-level meetings in all these different places all over South America. And in this one particular instance, we're in Peru, and he's meeting with the Secretary of Defense, his counterparts, other generals. And in these meetings, I'm usually a fly on the wall, just kind of taking notes. And I remember being really tired. Falling asleep tired in this meeting. And these meetings are all the same. They always start off with people shaking hands, talking about their kids, and eventually there's a guy that walks in with coffee and pastries for everybody, right? And I'm not very much of a coffee drinker. And And so I'm just tired as anything in this meeting, and I'm texting with our security guy who's outside the room, and I'm telling him, hey, when the coffee guy comes in, because I know the coffee guy's going to come in, have him bring one more cup of coffee for me because I'm dying in here. So he's like, cool, I got it. So, like anything, the coffee guy comes in, and he comes in with 1 cup of coffee, right? And so he goes to my boss. He goes, here's your coffee. And my boss says, I didn't order coffee. And then he goes to the Secretary of Defense. He's like, here's your coffee. He's like, I didn't order coffee. And he goes down on the line with all these generals, asking each of them, is this your coffee? And then they all said no. And I'm in the corner. And the guy says, there's only one guy left. And this, like, did you order the coffee? I'm like, yeah, that was me. And they all looked at me like,
how did you order the coffee?
No, I mean, I'm a low-ranking guy, and these guys are all generals, and they looked at me like, oh, you happy you got your coffee now?
Are we keeping you up?
15 minutes of our meeting.
Yeah, it was.
My God!
And after the meeting was over, I told the guy, dude, I told you. When the guy brings in all the coffee, just add one more in there. Don't just bring in 1 cup of coffee. And my boss gave me this look like,
you're dead.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my goodness.
Well, Molly, what did we learn today? This has been an exciting.
This has been great.
This has been a great episode.
You know what? It's been nice to see a man in touch with his feelings and learning from his journey, and that's exciting to see.
We learned about the gutter pea.
Yes,
right?
gutterpea.com.
Gutterpea.com. So all of you private equity investors and angel investors that want to get in on a rocket ship.
You want to get even richer.
You're going to want to go there, and then Andy may take a meeting with you. Can't guarantee it, but he might.
Your people call his people.
Yeah, we learned about nuclear submarines, Molly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We learned about traveling in 3-year intervals.
Yes.
Right, and how that's probably why Andy's leaving Chagrin Falls right now.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to think about that because
dude, I think I'm on. I'm
talk
something.
to me in 2021. We'll see where I'm moving then.
Yeah.
We learned a lot. This has been awesome. Andy, thank you. This has been a great.
It's a pleasure.
By the way, this might have been the longest one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating you guys do this. I think it's awesome.
We like to hear ourselves talk, but thank you.
I'm sure it's fun.
Yeah. I was on the TV today, on the podcast tonight. I mean, this is a big day.
This is a big day.
I'm about to pass out.
Yeah.
Go take a nap.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting my son be in here.
Hey.
Hank, do you want to say anything to the crowds listening at home on the microphone?
Hi on my mic?
No.
Are you sure? Okay. Do you want to get in on the selfie?
Oh, he'll get it on the selfie.
Yeah.
Molly, any announcements? Anything you want to get out there to the million listeners we have?
Just our annual
essay contest,
and our annual awards speaker was announced yesterday, and we're super pumped.
You know who they're having? You know who Molly? You know who Molly got to be her speaker at her business awards dinner?
Yes.
An Academy Award winner.
Yes.
Yeah. Who?
Yes. Lee Unkrich. He wrote Toy Story 3 and Coco.
Oh, yeah?
Which is just released now
Big
and just
star.
up
Big
for a
star.
nomination.
Is he from Cleveland there?
He graduated from Chagrin Falls.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well,
I'm going to tell you
congratulations.
something. Folks, I'm going to tell you something right now. Molly knows everybody, right? If you ever want to meet somebody, just call Molly, and she'll be like, "Oh yeah, I got him in my Rolodex."
Oh,
Yeah.
I need to become LinkedIn homies with you then.
Yeah. There you go.
LinkedIn
I'm more of a Facebook gal.
You don't do LinkedIn?
I don't. I was just saying that I need to get on bettering that. I don't.
On LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you don't do nothing.
I
with
don't do LinkedIn.
You're Facebook.
Yeah. I'm a Facebook whore.
Well, I need to Facebook homies with you then.
Yes. All right. All right.
Are you, Andy, is there anything you'd like to say to our million listeners other than what you've said? This is your chance.
I would say if you're going through a hard time, just keep your chin up. Know that you're not the only person on earth who's experiencing this, whether you believe it or not.
This too shall pass.
And one thing also I would say, cancer is obviously part of my identity now. So I would say that if anyone ever offers you help, take it. Take it. Because for a couple reasons. One is that you're not the only person grieving. And when you don't accept someone's help, you're cheating them out of their way of grieving. And then two, it just makes your life so much easier when you accept someone's help.
Yeah.
I think it takes courage to ask for help, and it takes humility to accept it. And once you can get over those two things, your life will significantly improve.
Wow.
That's good stuff.
Nellie, you need to, in the introduction to this, you need to tell people that they need to stay till the end, because that's pretty...
Or maybe just put that at the beginning.
No.
I don't know. I've been telling Nellie, I think the move is to... do you ever listen to James Altucher? Like, start the podcast with snippets from the podcast, but with a music backdrop.
That's what they do on How I Built This.
Yeah. And I would do it. I would do what he just said.
Yeah.
That last piece.
That was big.
Yeah.
That was...
So for the 3 listeners that are still listening.
I'm not even listening.
So that would be Andy's parents. and maybe
and
Gil.
Andy.
No, and Hank's, I'll have to like chain him down to the chair and just pipe it through the radio.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness. We're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you.
Yes.
Here, gutterp.com, go to covermy6.com, go to gertzberglaw.com/essay, go to cvcc.org. Man, that's a lot of words and a lot of domain names.
Stuff.
But all of those, if you go to any one of those, what you will find is enlightenment and true happiness.
stuff.
Well, I
true
think
happiness.
with Check My Six, you're basically starting a company within a company. And even though you have a running business already, I think this new venture is basically you're back from square one, really. You know, you're trying to identify, get that service recognized, identify that brand, market it, get early adopters.
Yeah.
You're taking all those spears right now.
You're an entrepreneur.
You are.
We're on the same journey, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening, folks. We will catch you next time.
Bye.
Later.